I want to give you a big, huge, warm-hearted welcome to Astrology Hub TV. My name is Amanda Pua Walsh, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Astrology Hub. And Astrology Hub TV is a weekly show dedicated to helping you explore your connection to the cosmos and how cultivating this connection can help you live a more empowered, fulfilling, and vibrant life. We're here live every Thursday at 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern. And if you'd like to receive live alerts for when we go live every time on our Thursday broadcast time, you can sign up for live alerts. This will give you a Facebook message every time that we're live, and so you will not miss an episode. And today we are talking about the link between the myth and movement of the Asteroid Ceres and the recent outpour of sexual harassment allegations in the media. How are these related? And how understanding this link can help us find hope for a world where these things don't happen. So how is all this related, and exploring the myth, the movement, the Asteroid Ceres, all of it together. And we'll be doing that today with professional astrologer and creator of rulingplanets.com, Christopher Renstrom. He's going to cover, again, the story of the Asteroid Ceres, named after the Roman goddess of the grain, how to analyze an asteroid's birth chart and find its ruling planet, how Ceres' current transit and progressions relate to today's sexual harassment issues. All right, Christopher, it is so great to have you here again. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's always a pleasure.
All right, so we're covering a very sensitive topic today. So I just wanted to take a moment to give everybody a chance to get grounded and centered. So we're going to do this really quickly, but I think it's really important so that we all can feel safe and connected to our hearts and have this conversation in a place that feels grounded and centered. So I would just like to invite you all to close your eyes for a moment and to tune into your breath. And to feel your connection to whatever surface that you're sitting on. Feel your connection to the earth. Allow just a moment to let any sort of tension or anxiety or frustration. Oh, wow. That is a very loud sound. Do you hear that behind me? Christopher, did you hear that?
Was it a fire alarm or something?
Yes, it's a fire alarm. Wow, very interesting. Sorry, everybody. Hopefully that'll stop. If not, we may need to hop off and hop back on while I deal with that. Okay, sorry. So back to the centering, back to your breath. This is what happens when we do things live. We have to flow with things, and especially during Mercury retrograde.
We call it live theater.
Exactly. Okay, so connecting with your breath, connecting with your heart, and just allowing a moment to feel yourself supported by whatever structure you are sitting on. And also allow yourself to feel your connection to the cosmos, to the divine intelligence that is there broadcasting to us always and guiding us. And just taking a moment also to feel your connection to everybody who is on this live broadcast and everyone who will be tuning in later. Just knowing that you are connected, that you're not alone. And that we are here today guided by a beautiful, brilliant soul, Christopher Renstrom. Just taking a moment to express our gratitude, Christopher, to you for being here and for all the wisdom that you'll share with us today. Taking one deep breath together, just go ahead and exhale your breath. And breathing in as deep as you can. And breathing out. Okay, and open your eyes. Hopefully there's not a fire in my house. I know that there's a lot of fires going on in Southern California, just reaching out to all of you who may be affected by that as well. There's a lot going on in our world, obviously. So before we dive into our topic today, I'd love to tell you a little bit more about our guest, Christopher Renstrom. He's the creator of rulingplanets.com, a subscription-based interactive astrology website adapted from his best-selling book, Ruling Planets, published by HarperCollins in 2002. Christopher also writes the daily horoscopes for the San Francisco Chronicle and SanFranciscoGate.com. He created and wrote the horoscope column for Allure magazine from 1991 through 2009 and is now the exclusive astrologer for Patty Stanger, the Millionaire Matchmaker. Christopher was voted Best Astrologer by Utah's City Weekly in 2012 and 2013. He also lectures around the country on the history of astrology in America. Christopher is also one of our featured astrologers on our upcoming Saturn and Capricorn intensive training, Make Your Destiny Real. This intensive workshop is featuring 3 astrologers, Christopher, Gemini Brett, and Jennifer Rasiopi, and is designed to be your go-to guide for what many astrologers are calling the transit of the year, as Saturn moves into Capricorn and will be there for 3 years. This transit will challenge our structures, force us to build new foundations, shine the spotlight on where we're out of alignment. And there are things you can do now to ensure that you're prepared for this transit and that you're clear on your work assignments and opportunities for the next 3 years. So this intensive takes place next Wednesday, December 13th at 2 o'clock Pacific, 2 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock Eastern. It's going to last 2 hours, and the recording will be made available for anyone who registers. These Astrology Hub intensives are regularly priced at $44, but you can get in now for only $22. So Christopher is going to be giving us a sneak peek into his teaching style and the wisdom that he has and the depth of astrological experience and knowledge. So if you'd like to join us for that intensive, he will be featured again next week. Again, the link for this is in the chat below and also in the description of the talk. So we'll be talking about that more at the end as well. All right, so just a question for all of you out there who are tuning in. How many of you are familiar with the myth behind the Asteroid series? So write in the chat if you're familiar, just learning, or you have no clue. I would just love to see where we're at with the Asteroid series and the myth and the story behind that. Okay. So Christopher, let's start there with the story of the Asteroid series named after the Roman goddess of the grain.
Okay. First of all, we owe so much of asteroids being introduced into astrology to the astrologer Demetra George. So I really have to begin with a salute to her, because it has been her personal campaign to go and research the asteroids and then to find a way to integrate them into astrology as we practice it today. So she's very much a wellspring for a lot of this information, and she wrote a wonderful book, and I strongly advise and encourage you to go and see it. Ceres is an asteroid named after the goddess, who is actually the most grounded of the goddesses. As you were going through the exercise and talking about grounding and finding your place, Ceres is very much about that. She is the goddess of the grain, as you mentioned before, and we get the word cereal from her name. In Roman mythology and Roman culture, Ceres ruled over fields and the property of fields. So each of the asteroid goddesses are assigned a certain space in society. Juno rules over the institution of marriage. Athena rules over the state. Vesta rules over the fire, the eternal flame, the cooking. Ceres rules over agriculture and farmland. So these are the things that she's associated with. It's the earth giving forth of its plenty and allowing people to live. And so of all the gods and goddesses in the Greek and then the Roman pantheon, Ceres is the one who's most connected to the common man and the common woman. Okay, where the gods might reside in heaven and be very apart, very aloof, not really sort of caring about mankind or their playthings, Ceres is integrally, personally involved in life taking place in this world, on this planet, with this land. This is what she's important for. What makes Ceres so singular and why her myth and her story is so important is that she is a woman whose most sacred possession, or the thing that was most special to her, was her child. It was her daughter. Okay. Other gods are known for certain things. Zeus is known for the thunderbolt. Mercury is known for communication. Aphrodite is known for slipping into something more comfortable so she can be seductive. Mars is known for war. Ceres is known for her daughter. This is really important because the society that we're talking about at this time, the Greek society, which then goes into the Roman society, the place of women in society was low. It was as low as a slave, unless you were married, okay, and you were part of an established family. Then your position was completely defined by your husband and by the children that you had and your family line. So here we have a goddess who appears in this very patriarchal society as triumphing women. Okay, and in particular, her most sacred thing in her life is not a son, it's her daughter. Okay, and so this is where I really sort of want you to begin the story of Ceres, the importance of her daughter to her. More than that, she's a single mother. Okay, she's not married. There's no man there to protect her. It's her and her daughter. And she is responsible for life living on this planet Earth. And the gods rely on this because the gods rely on the sacrifices that mankind makes to them. This is their energy supply. This is what gives them their fuel. This is what allows them to maintain their sovereignty, is the sacrifice from humankind. So Ceres, who is responsible for things growing in the world, plays a very important role. But again, she's not up on Mount Olympus or in the hallowed halls of heaven. She's down here working the fields next to the men and women who have to scrape out a living on the land. So that's what makes her so very important. Now, in this story, as I mentioned, she has a daughter, and her daughter at the time of this event is maybe 13, maybe 15. Something that we also have to remember about this society is that women marry in Greece at the age of 13, okay, and they could marry men who were 30, okay, and so there was a reason why they were treated like children, because they were literally children, and they were kept in that sort of infantile or dependent place. So again, Ceres steps out of that realm. She steps out of that sphere. She's not answering to a man, okay? And she has this daughter, obviously by making love to another god, but she doesn't marry him. She has the daughter on her own. So her daughter is out in the fields one day, picking flowers and with friends. This is pretty much how Ovid describes the story. And then all of a sudden the ground cracks open, and out of the ground comes Pluto, okay? Hades is his Greek name. In his chariot, drawn by horses, and he abducts Persephone. That's Ceres' daughter's name. Her daughter's name is Persephone. He abducts Persephone, and he takes her down into hell, or Hades, which is the world beneath the surface, beneath the ground, and the ground seals itself up again. And in polite society, or in poetry, as it was, translated from the Latin or whatever, it was an abduction. It's not, well, it's an abduction, but it's an abduction and it is a rape, all right? And it is a horrible event that takes place. And again, what's so fascinating about this myth is that they would explicitly describe that in this tale, okay? So, later on, people will go on and say, oh, it celebrates the ritual of agriculture and things like this, but we're actually getting an insight into the culture here. And it's a culture, it's a rape culture in regards to women, okay? That is exactly what's taking place, and it's not glossed over. Okay, so Persephone is taken down into the underworld by Pluto, who never comes above ground for anything, not if he can help it. And he's going to make her his wife. So Ceres, the mother, whose most sacred thing in the whole world is her daughter, calls out to her daughter. And her daughter actually does call out mother before the ground swallows her up, but Ceres doesn't hear her cry. And there's no response. She can't find her daughter anywhere. And so she interviews the friends. What has happened to Persephone? What has happened to my daughter? And the friends don't say anything. Okay. The friends don't say anything because they know who took her, and they know that to cross that, to name that name, is dangerous. And so they don't know. And so Persephone Ceres gets exasperated with them. She presses for answers, and they don't know. They decline. They don't know. And so then Ceres cross-examines animals. She cross-examines anything within earshot. Have you seen my daughter? Have you seen my daughter? No answer, no answer. And so now she's starting to get really upset. And so she takes her case to Zeus, and she takes her case to the Olympians. And she says, my daughter, Persephone, has been abducted and I cannot find her anywhere. Can you tell me what happened to her? No one answers. No one's saying anything. They know what happened. They're not saying anything. So Ceres becomes furious, and of course, as she gets angry and she presses and she begs anything, where's my daughter? Where's my daughter? Everyone's like, we don't know. And then they're kind of like, oh, she's getting hysterical. She's getting crazy. She's, those patronizing terms that I'm sure that many of us are already familiar with are the answers. And so Ceres then, one of the things that she becomes famous for, because it happens in this myth, is that she lights 2 torches. And with these 2 torches, she roams. She doesn't roam, she canvasses the earth in the night and in the day, and she is searching for her daughter, calling out for her daughter, and she wants to know where she is, what has happened, and no one is answering. And she confronts Zeus over and over and over again. And even Juno, Zeus's wife, is like, can you please tell her? And he's like, no. And the reason he can't tell her, by the way, is because he made an agreement with Pluto, his brother. Pluto is the brother to Zeus, and the third brother is Poseidon, Neptune. He made an agreement with Pluto that he could have Persephone. So Zeus, who is the uncle of Persephone, who's supposed to be guarding Persephone, all right, makes this deal with Pluto and says, you can take her. Pluto asked for one thing, Persephone, and Zeus says yes. And so he's now starting to feel a little bad, but you know what? The guys are in charge. That's the way things are done, okay? And so no one is telling Ceres anything, and Ceres knows it. What was wonderful about Amanda bringing up that earlier exercise about sitting on the ground or sitting on the object, relating to the object that you're sitting on and letting it ground you, this is exactly what Ceres does. And in medieval cultures, there's even a reference in a Shakespeare play. It is a sign of protest from women. Okay, what they do is that they sit down in the middle of the road. They sit down on the ground and they refuse to leave. In the Temperance Movement, which starts in the United States in the 19th century, and I'll get into that in a little bit, when women are trying to stop their husbands from going to the saloon, because what was happening, the roots of our temperance movement, which is in the 1860s, 1870s, was because men would go and work a very long, hard day, and then they would go to the saloon and they would drink all the money away. Okay, and so they would come home with nothing at the end of the day. And if the wife protested or the child protested, he would beat them. And so this was done frequently. And so what women began to do, this is the origin of the temperance movement that ends up taking over the 1920s, but women would call together and go and sit in front of the saloon and try not to let the man pass. But if they passed, they'd call him out. They'd try to make him feel guilty. So women sitting on the ground and protesting is a very, very strong, long tradition. And one of the things that Ceres does is that she sits on the ground, okay, in protest. And she says, no one's answering me. No one's taking me seriously. I will get an answer. And the way I'm going to get this answer is nothing is going to grow. Now remember, she's the goddess of agriculture. She's the goddess of the grain. She's down with the plebs. She's down with the laborers. She's down with the workers. And she refuses to let anything grow. And so basically she places an embargo on heaven. Okay, the gods need mankind to give them sacrifice. They sacrifice with grains, with vegetables. They sacrifice with pigs. They sacrifice with cows. Well, all of a sudden the pigs are dying. The cows are dying. There's famine on the land. And one of the things that Ceres represents as the asteroid in the horoscope is feast or famine. That's always one of the big questions with her. Is she bringing feast or is she bringing famine? Okay, so here she refuses anything to grow. And at first the gods are like, well, you know, she'll get over it. And, you know, well, she's not getting over it. She remains seated on the ground. She's not moving. All right. And there's famine on the land. Livestock begins to die. The human race begins to die. They can no longer eat. They can no longer sustain themselves. And at that point, Zeus says, okay, we've got a problem here. What are we going to do about it? And so he turns to his fellow gods and goddesses, and they have no idea other than they're hungry and they need mankind to sacrifice to them. And this is a crisis. Okay, no one has ever gone up against Zeus, okay, outside of Saturn, when the gods fought over heaven and Zeus won. So no one has ever defied Zeus. I mean, people have tried to do it, but unsuccessfully. But this time Zeus's sister, Jupiter's sister Ceres, is succeeding. And so he turns to Mercury, who's the messenger of the gods, okay? And he says to Mercury, you've got to go down to Hades. You've got to go down to Pluto, and you've got to strike a deal. Okay, you've got to get Persephone back, because if you don't get Persephone back, we're in a lot of trouble. And Hermes is like, on it. Okay, so Hermes has the winged sandals, and Hermes is the only god who can travel from heaven to earth to hell and back again. He knows all the ins and outs. Okay, so Hermes travels on down to Pluto, to Hades, and he visits him in the gloom. And he describes the situation that's going on. And Pluto says, yes, I noticed there's been an uptick in dead souls recently coming on through my doors. You think I wouldn't have noticed this sort of thing? And Mercury says, well, you have to help us out. And Pluto says, I'm a reasonable guy. Of course I can help you out. Persephone has always been free to go. She can go on her own. And Persephone, hearing this, says, oh, really, I am? And he's like, of course you're free to go. You can leave right now if you want to, but there's just this one little thing, you know. And Mercury's like, well, what is it? And Pluto says, as long as she hasn't eaten anything down here in the underworld, anything that would tie her to this world, she's free to go. And at that moment, Persephone's like, oh. And they're like, what? She's like, do 6 pomegranate seeds count? And Pluto's like, what could I do? My hands are tied. And they're like, yes, unfortunately. And so what they do, and this is extraordinary, this is the first custody battle that's ever fought in the history of mythology, okay? And it's between Ceres and Pluto over Persephone. They work out a deal. She can spend half the year above ground with her mother and half the year below ground with Pluto. And what that became was a lovely metaphor, although not from a lovely place, but a lovely metaphor about agriculture. You know, that the time of year that Persephone is above the ground, things grow and bloom, and there's these beautiful harvests. And the time of year that she is below ground is when crops and agriculture go to seed, and they go down into the ground as well, and the land is barren. And then, of course, it repeats and it recurs. So on one level, you know, that's nice. It's a lovely agricultural image. But the reason why this fascinated me so much with what's going on right now, and why, to me, Ceres is such a powerful figure for people, for women in particular, is Ceres comes out of a patriarchal society, which means a society dominated by men. You know, she goes up against the old boys network, okay? I mean, Pluto rules the underworld, Zeus rules the sky. I mean, like, these are the big CEOs, these are the big guys in charge, okay? And she doesn't try to plead with them. You know, I mean, she did. She asked them. They didn't believe her. She's hysterical. She's crazy. She got condescended to. But she sits down on the ground and she makes things stop. And that's what gets their attention. And to me, that's like almost the message or the lesson of the story. that the solidarity begins with just her. Who knows what the other goddesses thought? Okay, they didn't weigh in, they didn't say anything, but the solidarity begins with her solidity and her position, the way that she's going to be uncompromising and unyielding for it, and her love of her daughter, okay, which again, in Greek and Roman society is looked down upon. Women are less than men. Okay, but here, her love for her daughter, her standing by her sex, her female sex, is so strong and so powerful that it brings the king of the gods down to his knees, and he has to genuflect to her. Okay, Ceres again in a horoscope and as an asteroid will represent a number of different things. This is what's the beauty of and what's so rich about the archetypal tapestry, but there are a couple of strands that you can take on out, okay, and you can sort of lift from the rest of the weave, and you can examine them more closely. And there can be a resonance, a message, something which means something right now. And that was that was the first thing that I was looking for. And then, of course, by being able to work with the asteroid, some other things came up as well, which make it very pertinent and might even shine some light on different ways to work with the planet. But I did want to begin with the story.
Wow, you are an amazing storyteller, Christopher. I didn't realize that, but it's totally captivating. And most of the people in the chat have no clue about Ceres. So, most people wrote in that they've never heard the story. They don't know what her story is or her background. What I love about that story is that she knew her power. She knew where her power laid, and she just stood strong and clear in that. And I think that that's what so many of us women at this point are being asked to do as well, is just know our power. And like you said, there's no begging, there's no pleading, there's just standing in that. So super powerful. Even just the visual of her with the two torches in the night, just roaming the land. I mean, all of it is it's a bit haunting. And I think the interesting thing too, I wanted to ask you this question. Do we make the assumption that she also needed to eat, and that by sitting on the ground, she also was sacrificing her own need to eat, so to speak?
Well, look at things like sit-ins, okay, or hunger strikes that go on in prison. What we almost see sort of beginning out of this story is, it's called passive resistance, but it's more than a passive resistance. She isn't trying to shame. She isn't, getting angry or whatever. Yeah. She's bringing to an end. And she herself, she actually at one point takes on the guise of an old woman, and she travels the ground, the earth, not as beautiful as a goddess, but as an old hag. And she takes a position as a nursemaid in someone's, in a mortal's house, where she connects to a child again, and it's a different facet of the story, and it goes on its own different adventure. But what it is that she definitely, nobody's eating, she's not eating, nothing's happening.
Well, because that's what is always the crux of the issue, is that, especially like if we just take the Hollywood thing, I mean, their careers are always threatened. Their reputation is always threatened. In the Ceres story, she said, to hell with it. I won't eat. I don't care what people think about me. I'm going to stand for what I believe in. And this is what I believe in. I'm going to stand for what matters, which is my daughter.
Right. And just imagine for a moment what would happen if all the women got on the same page with that, which we're in the process of seeing happen right now. There would be an embargo on, the high office, whether it's the high office of the land in terms of politics or high office of the land in terms of Hollywood and entertainment. But the solidarity begins with solidity of purpose. It begins with that, and just, I'm not going to move on this. There's great strength in that kind of refusal.
And a lot of courage.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Okay, so Jolana asks, are Ceres and Demeter the same? Or Demeter, I don't know how to say that.
It's Demeter, and it means the mothers, Demeters. It's the mothers, and it's actually a reference to both Ceres and Persephone, because Persephone bears a child, and so it's that idea of the woman giving birth to a child that will in turn give birth to a child, and so that's why it's a goddess as opposed to a god, because a god doesn't do that. You know, guys can't do that, women can. Okay, so there's definitely a resonance or a filling in of the two. But what would be very important is to remember that Virgo is a sign and Ceres is the asteroid. So they're different players on that game board, but certainly that notion, you know, again, and this is what I like to point out, think of our 12 signs of astrology, right? One is a woman, only one. You know, nowadays they'll make Gemini a guy and a girl, or they'll make, you know, Aquarius the water bearer. You go back to the original iconography, it's always men. So there's only, again, one zodiac sign, which is a woman, and that's Virgo. Okay. And again, it's the power of that. It's the power of, on a different level or a different way of looking at it, the power of celibacy. You know, that's something in which people are like, the power of celibacy. But when you look at the history of celibacy, and that a woman choosing to be celibate and going into an environment like a convent, for instance, to be celibate, this was seen, you know, by Roman society, and then it continues into the Middle Ages before it becomes glorified, repackaged and seen as a sort of cornerstone of the church, but it's seen as heresy. You know, I mean, think of how many children died in childbirth. All of a sudden you've got women saying, I refuse to have a child. I refuse to marry. I refuse to continue the family line. Think of the power of that. You know, so again, it's that refusal. There are gods and goddesses that deal with anger and fighting and battle, okay? Not so many deal with refusal, withdrawal, ending. You know, I will not budge on this. And there's great power in that resistance.
Ooh, that is so powerful, Christopher, and so true, that we have a choice as to which energies we collude with. We can just opt out of colluding with certain energies that don't resonate or don't, you know, match our value system on some level. So yeah, very fascinating. Okay, so let's go to the second part that we wanted to cover: how to analyze an asteroid's birth chart and find its ruling planet. But before we do that, did you want to talk about why the movement, particularly right now, of the Asteroid Ceres is bringing all these things to the surface? Do you want to do that first?
Yeah, let's try that one on out. Okay. For size.
Okay.
Okay, so to begin with, asteroids in a chart, and they're kind of like the add-ons, okay, or they're the recent acquisitions right now. And again, a lot of this is thanks to Demetra George, who's really put a lot of years into really introducing that into astrology and to creating a place for it, a space for it. Asteroids, we have to remember as astrologers, are not planets, okay? So a planet can be in a sign and rule another planet that's in a sign, right? We sort of have that basic thing down. Asteroids cannot rule, they are ruled. Okay, so an asteroid can show up in a sign and it takes up space in the chart for that, but it cannot rule any other aspect of the chart. Okay, it is just itself. Okay, planets.
Why is that, Christopher? Is there?
They haven't been assigned rulership of a sign. Okay, basically any planet, and it's a hierarchy. Basically, planets are given rulership of a sign, but an asteroid is not given rulership of a sign. Okay, so it is ruled by whatever planet rules that sign. I know that's a little bit complicated, but it's an important dynamic.
Okay. Are most of the asteroids that have been identified feminine or not? Uh-oh. Christopher is frozen for me. Is he frozen for you guys too? Uh-oh.
Some sort of elongated. Okay.
There we go. Again? Oh, okay. And maybe I was the one frozen. Okay. Anyways, I was wondering if asteroids are mainly feminine.
That was the point that Demetra George was making. Most of the asteroids that were named, and I go back to basically kind of the original one. So it's going to be Ceres, Pallas Athena, Juno, and Vesta or Hestia. Okay, these are all feminine. Okay. And so that, of course, is the appeal. It's like, thank God we finally have some feminine energy coming into astrology.
Right, but in the hierarchy, they're still below planets.
Old boys club, just like Hollywood and politics.
Right. Okay.
But asteroids still have an effect and impact. But the way to work with them is that their rulership is always changing. Not only can they move through signs, but their rulership is always going to be changing. So for instance, like right now, Ceres is in Leo. Okay, the ruling planet of Ceres right now is going to be the sun. So we're going to want to follow where the sun is in the sky as long as Ceres is in Leo. So Ceres can't rule anyone else, but she's going to be following where the sun is. So if the sun is in Leo, that's where we want to look for her energy to be most powerful, for good or for bad. Does that sort of make sense there?
It does. Yeah, let's just check with the audience. Just make sure everybody is following that.
Yeah.
Just give us a yes or a no. Or if you need a clarifying question, just ask your question.
And feel free to say that, like, make it make sense.
Yeah. Jamie says, Christopher, then what planet rules Ceres? Am I understanding your statement correctly?
Ceres is ruled by whatever planet rules the sign that she is in at that moment.
Okay.
Okay, you know what? A planet rules a sign, okay? And a sign is connected to a house or two in astrology, right? So the planet is a homeowner, okay? Asteroids are always renters. Okay.
It's not lost on us.
Right.
Right.
Just in case you needed this, brought in.
Right.
So, okay. So asteroids are like renters. So the way that you're going to want to look at any sort of asteroid is first of all, where it's placed in your chart. Okay. But then when you're looking at where it is in your chart, you want to look at the planet that rules that sign where it appears, because that's where the asteroid is actually going to have impact. If I can try a different approach, think of an asteroid as an adjective. Okay, you've got car. Is it a red car, a big car, a small car? An electric car? Okay, electric, red, small, big, these are the adjectives. They're going to describe the car. So if an asteroid is in a sign ruled by a planet, okay, the planet is car, and then the asteroid's going to say pretty, big, fuel guzzler. It's going to modify or adjective or describe that car. That's what the asteroid basically does, okay? And so sometimes it might not be much, and sometimes it may be a huge deal. Like for instance, right now, where we're really getting hit with the power of Ceres being very, very powerful. So does that kind of work a little bit?
That works.
Make sense? Okay. So maybe the next best idea would be to demonstrate how we're seeing this.
I was gonna say, let's do an example.
Yeah, let's do a segue, Christopher. Okay. Okay, so in this instance, okay, what I would like to do is, if it's possible with Stephanie, to switch to the visual.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I love this painting, if I can stay just a moment here, by Millet. He's a French painter, and this is from, I think this was painted in the 1860s. And I love this image of Ceres because she's laboring. You see her, it's Ceres, it's also, the title of the painting is also Summer, which is Ceres's time, the time of the harvest. And as your person asked earlier, is a connection to Virgo, absolutely. Virgo rules over the dog days of summer, the hottest days of summer. And here you see Ceres is out here in summer. Okay, and what's really important is that she's holding something which is very important to her next to her child, and that's the sickle. Okay, she is the goddess of the grain. She's the goddess of the harvest. Okay, and so this is the thing, she's collecting and gathering the things that are going to allow you to eat. Now, what's important about this is that the sickle is also the sacred instrument to another god who has a planet named after him, and that's Saturn. Okay, and there's actually a very strong connection between Ceres and Saturn. Now, from a mythological standpoint, Ceres is one of the children of Saturn. Saturn has three sons, and he has three daughters. right? Do I have that right? Yeah, Hestia, Juno, and Ceres. All right. So Ceres is Saturn's daughter, but if we can go to the next slide there. Here we go. You'll notice that the glyph for Saturn is a sickle, but if you look below and see the glyph for Ceres, it's the Saturn symbol turned upside down. Okay, so what you're seeing is the instrument or the instrument or the symbol of the sickle repeating, but in the case of Ceres, it's turned upside down. All right, and I just wanted to make that point. Okay, next chart, please. Okay, I think we can see, can you guys see that whole chart right there?
Yes, Stephanie, if you can move up just a little bit more.
Okay, what I'd like to demonstrate with this chart, this is Ceres's, what I call Ceres's birth chart. Okay, the asteroid's birth chart. The asteroid was discovered in 1801, January 1st, 1801. So it has a birthday. Okay, that's when it was discovered. So like any old astrologer, you go and you draw up the horoscope for Ceres, and this is Ceres's horoscope. And what I find kind of interesting, it's an idea I'm playing with, so I'm throwing it out and whatever it does for you or doesn't, okay. But can we see the power of the asteroid by transits in its own chart? Okay, is actually the question that I'm asking. So here what I find fascinating is that you see the symbol of Ceres, okay, is right there at the top of the chart. Mars is in Taurus. It's actually closest to the midheaven, but Ceres is not that far away. And she's actually right there at the top of the chart. Okay, which is like, what are the chances of that? Okay, that Ceres is there at the top of the chart. So Ceres is in Taurus, okay, but Ceres is a Capricorn. You'll see the sun in Capricorn down there in the 5th house, okay, because she's born January 1st or discovered January 1st, 1801 at 8:10 p.m. But if you go, you'll see that the planet that is rising is the other sickle image, and that's Saturn. Okay, so Ceres is basically, we would describe Ceres as being a Capricorn with Saturn and Leo rising. So her own ruling planet, and that's the way that I work, the ruling planet is the planet that rules your sun sign. Her own ruling planet is Saturn. Okay, and so I think that there are attributes that are Saturnian that are also connected to Ceres. And the case that I make for that is both of them are agricultural gods. Both gods taught mankind how to make something of the earth so that mankind doesn't just like starve on it, you know, and both of them are uniquely involved in the affairs of mankind. Okay, Saturn is an overthrown god. He's a deposed ruler. He wanders the world like Ceres, okay? And Saturn teaches mankind agriculture, and Ceres is the goddess of agriculture. What's also kind of fascinating, just as a sort of quick note, is that I think it's like Ceres's 5th Saturn return or something like that since her discovery. Like she had been demoted to an asteroid right away, like within within the year, a couple of years when she was discovered. She began as a planet, then became an asteroid. Well, on her like 5th Saturn return on September 13th, 2006, where the Saturn returned to 19 degrees Leo, she's born with 23 degrees Leo, that's when Ceres was elevated to a planetoid. Okay, so she went from being lowly asteroid to like planetoid when they were working out all of that Pluto business. So this idea of like rise and descent, you know, or rise and descent, descent and rise, you know, being under, coming back up again, you know, going underground, resurfacing. These are themes that we would expect to see with Ceres. But what you may also notice is that the Ceres, as I said, is 23 degrees Taurus. And to demonstrate very quickly here, the planet that rules Taurus is going to tell us about Ceres. So in other words, if Ceres is in Taurus, she's ruled by the Venus in Aquarius, which is opposite its ruler Saturn. But anyway, that's where we would look to sort of find out more information about Ceres. And when you look at Venus in Aquarius, what you're kind of seeing there is someone who's connected to the people, women in society. These are things that would be connected to Venus in Aquarius right there in the 7th house. So that's something that sort of like hangs in the background there until it's triggered. Just to make a quick comment, and I apologize if it gets to astrologies, but I'm also trying to bring that into the conversation as well. When the Access Hollywood tape surfaced, the one that everyone's talking about with Donald Trump, where he says all those things about women, Ceres had just entered Taurus. So remember, Ceres is in Taurus in her own chart. Okay, so Ceres entered Taurus right there at the top of the chart, right when the Access Hollywood tape surfaced. Okay, so that's something which would be of interest, but then you want to see, well, what comes of that? What results of that? Okay, Ceres entered Taurus when the Access tape surfaces. Okay, what's that mean? Well, on, I've got it somewhere in these notes. I believe it's September 23rd, Ceres enters Leo. And on October 4th, if I'm remembering correctly, we have the first allegation against Harvey Weinstein. All right. Ceres enters Leo on September 23rd. Again, she enters Leo. Leo's ruled by the sun. Where's the sun? The sun is in Libra. Okay, it's in a Venus-ruled sign. So there's a sort of Venus theme that's going on because Venus is the planet of women, of course. And so we've got Venus in Aquarius, for instance, here in our chart. Access Hollywood surfaces when Venus is in Scorpio, which is the violation towards women or angry women, Venus in Scorpio. So Venus is in Libra, which is dealing with the affairs of women, when Ceres enters Leo. And then if I can go to the last part, please. This is Ceres Asteroids progressed chart. And I do like to work with progressed charts also in terms of transits. In the progressed chart, you'll notice down here in the 6th house, Ceres is in Leo and she's lined up with the ruler of Leo, which is the sun, by progression, Mercury, Jupiter, and Saturn. They're all lined up in the 6th house in Leo. And so my idea that I'm bringing to the table is that this is a whole stellium of planets in Leo, which has actually been triggered off from that eclipse in Leo. And so this is what's getting fired up, okay, at this period of time. I know that Ceres is there to, I had these notes written down, but they've gone the way of all things. Anyway, Ceres is in Leo, I think maybe to about next May or June-ish. And so this whole period from now until about May or June, as Ceres by transit travels over this progressed path down here in the 6th house, is going to be inflamed. I mean, I'm looking at it in terms of just like a very fiery path, like things are going to be hitting, like the eclipse in February is going to hit this off. You know, anything that's going to trigger that Leo, so we can, you know, having been in the season of Scorpio, that set it off. When we go into Aquarius, which is January 19 to February 19, that's going to set it off. If it's on the other side of the May, then that part of Taurus, April 19 to May 19, that's going to set it off. But that's my idea of why this has come out now. So again, it's the planet, it's how it's been triggered in her chart. And I guess my fantasy, and it's a fantasy, it's an idea, is that perhaps an asteroid responds to transits in its horoscope by the influence that radiates out from it onto the world. You know, I mean, you know, we're so used to planets impacting or affecting us, but I think that if we can draw a horoscope for a planetoid, because that's technically what she is now, we can see that effect playing out. But I thought it was curious that right when she goes into Leo, and then Jupiter goes into Scorpio, it sets up that squaring energy right off the bat. Scorpio, as we know, is so much connected to sex, death, other people's money, debt, the money that you owe other people, sex scandals and things like that. Why would it be coming out to the surface right now? And I think, I'm not saying that that's the answer, but I think that that might be a piece of the puzzle that is worth consideration.
I do too. I definitely do too. And when you were telling the story, I was thinking about how sad it is really that no one stood with Ceres, that there were no goddesses by her. No, she was standing alone. But like what you just said, at this point in time, it's almost like all these women that are coming out are standing with Ceres and saying like, we're here together. So we talk about this a lot in the shamanic astrology conversations about how it is a co-creation between us and the planetary beings. And so maybe it does create more solidarity for her. Maybe we feed off each other when we stand together.
Yeah, well, and I think that that might be an interesting idea to connect to the fact that Venus rules the Ceres in the Ceres chart in Aquarius. So it's that idea of standing together as a community and making up your own community. You know, it's not, you know, Aquarius is society, but it's not blood tie society. It's the society you create with other people because of common interests or, you know, common pursuits or even of culture. So the society of Aquarius is not the same society of something more tribal, for instance, like maybe Cancer, which is more blood ties sort of thing.
Well, so you will be covering, so for everybody out there, Christopher Renstrom is a guiding astrologer for the Inner Circle in 2018, and you will be our guiding astrologer when the eclipse point is triggered again in February, correct?
Yep.
We will definitely be able to revisit this conversation.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's put a little red flag or something like this next to it and see if there's any sort of serious activity that's taking place.
Christopher, I have a dream. I have a dream where we would be able to take little snippets from past conversations and then overlay them on what's actually happening. Because so many of the astrologers, like the predictions that were made from the eclipse about fires, about the shadow being exposed of the country. I mean, that's all happening right now. And so many of them said that. So it's almost like, you know, being able to take clips of them saying what's going to happen and then what's actually happening. It's fascinating.
Well, it's one of the beautiful things about being an astrologer these days, you know, is because emails are time stamped. We do have clips of things being said. So it's not, you know, someone can't say like, oh, you're making it up or, you know, trying to, you know, hey, there's my timestamp.
We have a lot of evidence. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. Well, and tell us if you see this connected in with the Saturn and Capricorn transit as well. So I know Ceres and Saturn have a lot, you know, obviously they're very related. So tell us how you see that tying in.
Well, I think Saturn I think they play a very strong role in each other's energies. I'm kind of throwing out the idea that there may be a lot more Saturn involved in Ceres than is given the case. You know, she's kind of seen more as kind of mothering and benevolent mother or whatever, but there's a flip side to her too. And I think that, you know, certainly the idea of dealing with the downtrodden or the underdog, a lot of people, and we'll get into this in the talk, a lot of people kind of have this idea that Saturn, because it rules Capricorn or whatever, is associated to the elite, you know, or to people in charge. But if you go back and look at the iconography for Saturn, Saturn has always been associated to the downtrodden, to the disenfranchised, to the common people. So I think that the Saturn moving into Capricorn is going to bring forward a very strong emphasis on the lower classes, on people who are suffering economically, and their perhaps solidarity or coming together behind that. Saturn has a very strong connection to that. If you look at the last time that Saturn was in Capricorn, now, albeit it was also there with Uranus, but that's the Great Russian Revolution. That's the breaking up of USSR. That's the common folk, you know, taking down that Berlin Wall. So Saturn is not about the elite, you know, and being, you know, disconnected or something like that. If anything, there is a revolutionary side to the planet. There always has been. And its alliances, its sympathy are with those who are without, not with those who are with.
Wow. Okay. Well, we're going to be doing a big deep dive into that next week. If you'd like to join us, everybody, it's Wednesday at 2:00 Pacific. We're doing a Saturn and Capricorn intensive. It's called Make Your Destiny Real. It's about the Saturn and Capricorn transit that's starting on December 19th and lasting for 3 years. It's a really, really big one for all of us, both personally and collectively. Christopher Renstrom is going to be one of the astrologers that we're featuring next week, along with Gemini Brett and Jennifer Rassiopi. The link to check that out and see if you'd like to join us is in the chat. It's also in the description above this video. It is normally $44. If you purchase today, it's $22. So check it out and join us if you can. And even if you can't join us live, it will be recorded for everybody who registers. We also have a free gift for any of you interested in learning more about the Saturn and Capricorn transit. that is available. It goes through all of the sun signs and rising signs and gives you your work assignments and your opportunities for the next 3 years. So check that out. That's a free offering that we also have in the chat and in the description above the video. Christopher, is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with before we close up?
Great gratitude and thanks for letting me talk to all of you and visit with all of you tonight. And Amanda, for you welcoming me onto your show, which I think is such a treasure, you know, and it's such an honor and a privilege to participate. And so I just cannot tell everyone how thankful I am to visit with you this evening.
Oh, same here. We are honored and privileged as well, Christopher. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited to be featuring you next week. And then we get to spend a lot of time together in 2018. You're also going to be on our forecast event in January. So lots of Christopher Renstrom coming up for all of us. Christopher, if they would like to learn more about you, where should they go?
They should go to my website, which is rulingplanets.com. So ruling planets is all one word, then there's a dot, then there's a com. And that's where you can see what it is that I do. And if you're interested, shoot me an email and I'd love to write you back and correspond.
Awesome. Okay. Fantastic, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We will be here next week, same place, same time. Thank you for tuning into Astrology Hub TV and for making astrology a part of your life. We'll see you next time.